right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Gonna wait a couple minutes and give people time to come in if they choose to. As you come in, if you choose to come in, say hello. Let us know you're here. That'd be great. If not, then that's fine too. No problem at all. Hopefully, you had a very productive night and a productive day as well. Tonight, we're going to be speaking on educational topics. And so we are very happy that you have chosen to give us some of your time. Hopefully, this will be interactive. This will be something that we can start, we can continue, because we all know that our educational system is so important. There is nothing that happens without education. And so we are very mindful of that. And we are extremely excited to be able to start, hopefully, the first of many conversations as it relates to the most honorable profession, but most times the most misunderstood, disrespected, and just underappreciated profession, and that is education and teaching our kids and helping them to realize their dreams and things of that nature. So, in about another minute or two, I'll get started. If you're coming in, thank you so much in advance. All right. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started because being that we are in education, we always want to be mindful of times. We deal with bills, we deal with deadlines, we deal with expectations, local, state, federal, and so we are very timely, if nothing else, and you have to be in education. So, I'm going to go ahead and be mindful of your time and get started. As you do jump in, if you want to comment in the chat, you want to communicate, you can. If not, that's okay as well. So, um, first of all, I want to thank teachers across the world for having me, for thinking enough of me to provide me with this opportunity to speak on a couple of different topics that they relate to education. And we know that our system is a good one. I don't know if it's a great one, but it's one that we we kind of know that there are some good, and it's probably like everything, not just education. There are some things that we can do well. There's some things that we can improve on, but a lot of times improvement, education, just understanding starts with a conversation. So hopefully this can be the start of many. There are a lot of different topics, a lot of different things that are going on, and sometimes just having the opportunity to speak about them can work wonders. So the first topic, or the first, kind of area that I want to speak on and discuss, possibly, hopefully, if we get some interaction, is the educational crisis. I call it the educational crisis. And we know that a crisis is something that is when things are in bad shape, when they need to be repaired, and it's almost to the point of no return. And so, um, our educational crisis, the first question that's up on this topic is related to COVID. And it's very simple. Will we ever recover from COVID 19? And I don't care where you were at, I don't care what city, state, what system you were working in, whether you were private, whether you were public, whether you were charter, whether you were post secondary, elementary, whatever. Everybody was affected by COVID. We were not prepared for it as a country. we definitely were not prepared for as an educational society. And COVID has really done a number on the educational system here in America. And we can still see the um, the effects of that devastation, that disease, way past the number of people that passed away. And I know that all of us either know someone who passed away who's affected by it, and so way past education. So we're not trying to marginalize or kind of minimize the loss, but in addition to the loss of life and and things of that nature, and some people lost their jobs and lost their careers and things, so it was felt in all areas of life. But here tonight we're speaking specifically on education. And this past year was more or less probably the first year, full year, that we had students in. I mean, because you came in like, depending on where you're at, some counties, some districts kind of did the half year mark where they kind of had students come back on campus. Then you had some people that decided to do some half on, half off. You had a hybrid type model, but probably this year was like the first kind of full year where nationwide people were um, fully back in school, and a lot of people saw the effects, and probably the effects that were seen the most in the elementary level. So like maybe like second, third grade level, because you got kids coming on campus. And a lot of cases, they're coming on campus for the first time because they spent their first 2 years of school, if it's a second grader, at home in front of a computer, or getting taught by mom or big sister, or little brother. Mom and dad still have to go and make a way. They got to go and work so that you can continue to provide for your family. And so in some cases, there was not even an adult that was helping to teach some of these kids. And just a lot of education can happen at home. We've seen a increase in online education, and different models of offering instruction, tutoring, after school support, things of that nature. So I'm not knocking the virtual part of things, but there are just some things that you have to do face to face. You have to, just for the total development of the child, especially those babies, at that young age. You have to be able to interact with other kids. You have to be able to know how to line up. You have to be able to know how to eat in the lunchroom. It's just certain things that you can't get at home. You're not going to necessarily focus. You got to learn how to get along with each other, get along with other kids. You realize that we're in a society, we're in a world where you got to deal with people. You're going to have, if you work, you're working with people. It's just a human element that we have to at least have these tools in place in order to be able to have a chance to be successful. So while we are working back to normal, I don't know if we'll ever be normal again. COVID definitely created an educational crisis. And so depending on the county or the district or the state that you're in, those how we're choosing to attack that or try to remedy or catch it up becomes I guess specific to that district. I personally don't understand why we are still doing standardized testing when some of the kids don't have the background knowledge. They don't have the skills, not because they've been in class and they just, they're struggling to get them, but because they have not been in class to even be exposed to the skills that they will need to be able to, perform on a test. Like if a kid is taking a standardized test for the first year or first time this year, they may not even know how to use all of the tools that are available to them while they're taking the test, because they haven't had to do it while we were in COVID, because most states kind of waived the test. And so for you to come right back in and have students taking the test, and then it's high stakes, it is standardized, so it's attached to, in some states it's attached to your grade. Like I know in Florida, it's attached to teacher staff evaluations, and you getting school grades. So you got some principals that are on the hot seat for a school grade that they really didn't have that much control over, because the students that are getting tested, in some cases, like third grade gets tested. In most states, third grade is the first grade that that test kind of goes into the equation of whether you get promoted or not. So if you don't score a certain level, you end up having to either go to summer school. In some cases, you may have to be retained. Well, if I'm a third grader and I've been homeschooled, essentially, which is what COVID made it nationwide homeschool. If I've been homeschooled for 2 years and then I chose to do hybrid, excuse me, for half of a year, and now this is my first year in, and I got to go take a test. That's just a lot to expect of a 9-year-old or 8-9-year-old child, and then attach that to whether it shows if a principal or school has been successful all year long, and then if a teacher is going to be in line like for a bonus, or be in line to be marked down on their evaluation off of something that they really had no control over. So I just, as far as will we ever recover from COVID, my prayers is that we will, but I just think we have a lot to catch up, and things are not changing. It's like a lot of states, a lot of districts, because they are so competitive, because they're feeling the pressure from outside sources and forces, and a lot of times that funding is attached to how your performance is. There's a lot of undue and unfair, in my opinion, pressure on teachers, especially because they're dealing with the kids every day, and then the administration to try to support these teachers, and COVID has brought along a lot of new issues that were not in place for admin. So now you're having to deal with a lot of other outside factors that sometimes impacts the administration's ability to give the support that teachers need. And so it's a tough situation. It's a tough road to travel. And so as far as we are concerned in the educational society, hopefully we will be able to try to bridge that gap as we kind of move forward, because the reality is that we're playing catch up. Hopefully at some point we will catch up, but right now we are behind, and it is a crisis that I don't know if everybody or enough people see it that way. I don't know if enough people give it the severity or the attention that it deserves, but it definitely is something that needs to be kind of looked at. So and so kind of going in line with that educational crisis is kind of a two parts to spin off of the COVID. Public schools probably was the most impacted, because once COVID hit, you had an influx of charter schools, you had an influx of private schools, and different school models became very popular, because public schools came under a lot of scrutiny because they were not performing. But it's like, you kind of giving me you're not giving me a fair chance, but you're judging me off of the notion that I've had a fair chance or a fair shake. And so you have these charter schools coming in, and nothing against charter schools. Let me make sure I say that I spent 11 years in charter schools, serving as an assistant principal and a principal in Florida. So I have no issues and no qualms, nothing negative to say about charter schools. Charter schools are great. They're a great alternative for students and parents that need that. But having said that, there are some charter schools that took advantage, in my opinion, this is just me, of the fact that public schools were getting the most scrutiny or the most criticism with how they were affected with the after effects of COVID. And so you had charter schools coming in. We can do a better job with this. We can provide this this model or this type of instruction, or we can give your child what they're not getting, and we can guarantee this. So it's very easy to come in and do the work or get credit for the work after it's been done. The heavy lifting has been done by the public schools, and the charter schools kind of came in. Like I say, not all, because once again, I have plenty of charter school experience, but there were some that took advantage of that situation, and not just private schools. I mean charter schools, but private schools. And in Florida, I can speak extensively from Florida because I spent a good portion of my educational career in Florida. So when I'm speaking, I can speak with authority. I can't really speak on all states. I have some experience and some I guess information or education on other states, but Florida, I have education and I have experience. So there were in Florida, you have a system where if a public school does not perform, then you have money. Each state, each school, each student gets money. Money is attached to students. Some states call it PTM or FTE. Everybody has a different kind of acronym for it. But in Florida, I'm just using them as an example. Say if my child goes to Bridgewater Baptist High School, I don't know, and Bridgewater Baptist High School makes a D or an F based off of the state grading system. I have the option as the parent to pull my student from Bridgewater Baptist High School and take them to All Hands on Deck Christian Academy. I don't know. And, Christian schools, private schools are not free. Well, the way the law is written in Florida, the money that my child would get to attend the public school, I can take that money and pay for what it was cost to go to the private school. And so that kind of eliminated a barrier for a lot of parents. They would probably rather send their kids to a private school because everybody doesn't have the best opinion or relationship or thoughts on public school. So a lot of people are very against public school education, but they can't afford private school. Well, this law made it where you don't have to foot that bill. The state is going to foot the bill you. And so a lot of private schools took advantage of that, like a lot of them. And I don't know, can you really blame them if private schools it's a business first. And so if I have a chance to be able to get more kids in and the barrier of money is now outdoor, then why wouldn't I? And so I think that's another part of the educational crisis, because I think there were some private schools, not all. Once again, disclaimer, there are some real good private schools that out there that do things for the right reason, but there are some predatory ones that kind of took advantage of that law, and they started kind of soliciting and recruiting kids to come to their schools based off of the fact that money is not an issue, and we're going to provide all this stuff. You got small class sizes. We're preaching the Bible and all these kind of things that parents want to hear. Your child's going to be saved. We don't have all this, that, and the third on our campus. They're selling the dream, and a lot of parents, drank the Kool-Aid. So that did create a gap for public schools, because now you have, in some cases, if I'm the principal at I don't know, Aquafina High, of course I'm using fictitious names because I'm not going to spotlight any specific school, and my child is a high performing student, and my money goes to, like I said, All on Hands Deck Christian Prep. So not just the money is going, but the performance is going. My child is going to be a high performing school student, so he or she's going to show well when it's time for the test scores to come in and for us to get our grade. So it became a double whammy. I'm losing money, and I'm losing the performance of those students, and so it became it's become a crisis in the fact that now some of our best students, public school wise, are now going over to private schools. Private schools don't have to worry about grades. They don't have to worry about teacher evaluation. They don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. So they don't have the pressure or the parameters of all of all of the things that public schools have to deal with. They don't have to deal with it, and so it's not even like a fair kind of fair playing ground at this point in some cases. And so that kind of both of those things kind of was a tag team effect to even accentuate the crisis that we're facing now even more so. And like I said, once again, you can't really blame the private schools for taking advantage of it, or the public or the charter schools that are not doing it the right way. But the public schools have been essentially, in some cases, held hostage because if you're a public school, you have district guidelines, you have state guidelines, you have federal guidelines that you can't will around. And especially, let's just say if you're a Title I school, you have even more guidelines and even more red tape, even more T's you got to cross and I's you got to dot to get the money the extra money you're getting. You have to follow all these different guidelines and stuff, and to get that funding, which you need to run a school. You gotta have that money to run a school, especially like I said, Title I, you got all these extra programs and resources that you got to have to reach those hard to reach kids. And so it just becomes a tough situation. And so from that sense, all those things kind of roll together, and now we have the crisis that we are dealing with. And those of us that are in education, we understand and we realize it's a lot of pressure to be an administrator. It's a lot of pressure to be a teacher. It's a lot of pressure to be a para. It's a lot of pressure that goes into the job. And a lot of times people don't really appreciate it. They just feel like you just walk in, you walk on water. What you mean they're not performing? What do you mean they don't have this, that, and the third? And you just don't know the half of the battle that public schools fight when people don't do school the right way and don't play fair. And like I say, there are plenty of alternative options, educational options for as charter and private that do play fair, but there are a lot of them that don't. And so to the public school people that are chiming in and that can relate to that, that's kind of, and like I said, it's like, what do you do? Because we're not even playing with the same playbook. Like I say, private schools can say we're not going to do standardized testing. Private schools can say you don't have to have make a certain score on the standardized test to graduate from high school. And so if my child is not a great test taker, he or she can be, you over here, all you got to do is do a portfolio. So essentially a portfolio is that you show in English 1 that you were able to, do A, B, C, D. In math, you just pass the class with a C and you're good. Whereas in public school, you got to pass Algebra 1 as part of graduation requirements. You got to pass, depending on your state. Florida is called, it's Florida, used to be called the FCAT back in the day. And it's FSA, and they're talking about doing away with it. In Georgia, it's called GMAS. Every state has their own standardized test. Well, if you're a public school, you have to take that test. You can't opt out. You can't say, no, I don't want to do it. Where in private schools, they can say, no, I don't want to do it. And so a lot of kids, I remember one year when I was working in Florida, I was working at a high school, and there was a situation where there were kids that couldn't pass. It was called the FCAT. They couldn't pass the FCAT. And you got these guys councils having these meetings with these kids, and you come in and telling them essentially that, you got a 3.8, 4.0 GPA. You've been accepted to the University of Florida, and all this stuff is lined up, but you didn't pass the FCAT. So guess what? You can't graduate from high school based off of this test, but you've passed every class since you've been in high school, haven't made less than a B, and one test that some kids just not good test takers. They have test anxiety. They just kind of freak out. They spaz out. It's not a representation of them as a student, because their work, they're in like AP classes, they're in honors classes, and these kids walking out the guys' office and they are like crying, they're in tears because their dreams are shattered. Well, one kid, I don't even know how the kid came up with it, but this kid found some kind of, it's a loophole. There was a high school in Massachusetts. Now we're in Florida. There was a high school in Massachusetts that essentially would allow the students to, they had to pay for it now, but they would allow the students to enroll in their school, send all their transcripts, all their information up to Massachusetts. Never had to step foot on the campus, never had to meet with anybody. You can send all your transcripts and everything to them. They will enroll you in their school for 2 days, and they would give you a high school diploma, because that school didn't have, Massachusetts at the time didn't have like a standardized testing requirement for graduation. And so one student found out about that at the high school I was working at. And we probably, out of probably like over 600 seniors in that class, it's probably 180 or 200 that had not made graduation requirements. And those kids just start flooding, start sending their stuff up there. So their high school diploma said Massachusetts Tech High School, but they did all their work from the high school that I was at, and they were able to use that diploma in order, to continue with their dream of going to college and moving on to where they, to their next stop after high school. But if they would have stayed and not had that option, they would have been they wouldn't have graduated, and they would not have been able to matriculate. And so there are a lot of schools now that are using that same model, that, hey, you don't come over here, you don't have to pass this test, so you don't have to meet all those graduation requirements that you got to meet over there at your high school, because they're a public school. And so that kind of, like I said, that just kind of accentuates the crisis that we're dealing with. So, and I know back then, and I'm, transitioning to the kind of the next topic, which is that's become a hot button topic, depending on what school you're at, what district you're in, what state you're in. Everybody's dealing with what we call social emotional learning. It's got a lot of different terms depending on where you're at, but we know now that we're more in tune and trying to tap into the whole child, not just the academic part of the child, not just the athletic part of the child, but the whole child, because we finally, as a society, are realizing that kids have a lot of stuff that they're going through and they're dealing with. Mental health is at an all-time high, and it didn't just start happening, but it's like we're just now starting to be able to understand that it is a epidemic in some cases. And so, as far as mental health, the sad thing is, most times some people think it's real, it's a real thing. Sometimes people think it's fake. So depending on what side of the fence you're on, is it about time that we're giving this type of, attention to social emotional learning, or is it long overdue? I tend to think it's long overdue. Kids did I always just say this when I was a principal, and I used to tell my staff, I used to tell my teachers, my admin, just the whole staff, you just never know what a child is going through. You never know what a child gets off the bus having dealt with. You never know what a child got out the car having to deal with. And sometimes the child had to get his little brother ready for school. He had to fix breakfast for, because mom is working 2-3 jobs, or she's been raised, or he's been raised by the grandma. You just don't know what's going on with these kids that they're dealing with. And sometimes we take for granted that they go through stuff mentally that affects them on campus or in class. If I'm having to deal with the fact that if our lights either might be cut off or already off, and then you coming to school and I'm coming to school, or I didn't even eat last night because we can't afford to eat. And some of those kids, those meals during the day, that breakfast and that lunch, those 10 meals during the week, for some kids, them the only meals that they get. And I'm speaking from experience because, like I said, we had kids like that, and nobody wants to to know, you know, that's not a thing where you want folks to know that you're struggling like that. But some of these kids, that's all they had. And so if you don't understand that and put, you know, give credit to the fact that kids are going through stuff that will affect them mentally, how in the world, I don't care nothing about algebra 1. I don't care nothing about English 2. I don't care nothing about learning a ratio, or did I put punctuate or you know, did I capitalize a sentence if I don't know if I'm gonna go home and be able to eat, you know? So it's like, and so then we get on the kids because of what they're dealing with, not even giving time to try to understand. Sometimes we take it for granted that them showing up, and some of those kids is the highlight of their day. Getting on campus, I'm on campus for 7 hours, 8 hours. I don't have to be grown. I don't have to see about my sister. I don't have to cook dinner. I don't have to clean the whole house. I get to just be a 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old child. I get to laugh. I get to go to lunch and just hang out and be goofy and not have any pressure on me. And I don't know if we always appreciate that. And over time, that stuff becomes mental. That stuff becomes emotional. And not even knowing how to deal. And, you know, going back to COVID, if a kid hasn't been in school, how do they know how to deal with another kid on a social level? If I haven't been in the situation to interact with kids, to know what's acceptable, what's not. How I deal with my sister at home, I can't necessarily deal with, you know, Judy at school. They'll send me home, you know. And so, but if they haven't been taught it, but then we're holding them hostage, or not hostage, we're holding them accountable for something that we haven't taught them or they haven't been exposed to. And then you get on the kid. And so now mentally the kid doesn't know what's right, what's wrong, what's up, what's down. And it becomes very hard to be successful academically because of all of the stuff that's going on before they even open the book up. I don't care what's in this English book if my life is not lined up. And I remember, and I'm not gonna say it the right way, but there was this book I used to always well, it's not book, but it's like poem. I used to always go with my staff at the beginning of the year, and the title of it was essentially all he asked was for a pencil, and the teacher was getting on this kid essentially, and the kid was like talking about all the stuff that he had to go through before he got to school, and all he wanted was a pencil. It's like he asked for a pencil, and the teacher just like snapped. I don't know if the teacher was having a bad day. You know, teaching is a tough profession. You know, it's a lot that you have to deal with, but there's a lot that the kids have to deal with too. And one way I think that we can help with the mental health, and, you know, just helping kids to feel more at ease, is to work on interpersonal skills. Just teaching the kids. I feel like I think we have to teach interpersonal skills just like we teach math, just like we teach social studies, just like we teach language arts, how to write a sentence, how to punctuate, when to put a period, when to put a comma. I think we have to teach interpersonal. I think we take for granted that the kids come to school with it, and more of our kids don't. And some of them hide it. And I'm not just saying the kids that are, you know, that are not two-parent household kids can come without it. High ranking, I won't say high ranking, but high earning parents. You know, you earn this amount of money. That doesn't guarantee that you know how to deal with other people. I mean, in some cases people call it soft skills, but knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to listen to people, being respectful, you know, just things that we take for granted, that we feel like, well, how don't you know that? How don't you know that you shouldn't, that's not what you should do? Well, who taught them? You're assuming that they've been taught it. You're assuming that they come with the skills that are needed to be able to interact with people. And once again, going back to COVID, if they haven't been in school for 2.5 years, who taught them? Where did they learn that? They've been doing home behavior, and the home child and the school child are never going to line up. used to always have parents like, well, my child wouldn't do that with me. Well, no, they're not going to do that with you because they're with you. But I'm telling you what they're doing when they are with me. And so the home child and the school child don't always line up. You have girls get off the bus and they got uniforms on. They looking like they looked when they left the house. But in the first period, they looking like it's the summertime. And I'm like, hold on, now that ain't what you got off the bus with. So, you call the parent, hey, I need you to, come bring some clothes to your daughter. Well, that ain't how she left the house. Well, ma'am, I can't tell you how she left the house. I'm telling you how she walk around this campus right now. And you got to come get her, or she can't be out here looking like she's looking right now. We that's just not what we do. But it's just like, if we haven't taught them, then how can we expect them to know? And I think sometimes we put a lot of pressure on these kids. And so when they do break down and they do spaz out because it gets so overwhelming and they don't know how to deal with it because they haven't been taught it, then I don't understand how we're surprised in some cases when kids do that. So I just think that we have to do a better job of teaching interpersonal skills, even to the point of, and this is a big one, especially in middle school, it's peer pressure. Because you all that are in middle school especially know that when they're in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, what you say as the adult does not matter. What you think about them as an adult does not matter if their friends are not co-signing them in the hallway, in the locker room for PE, in lunchroom, at the bus stop. If they're not getting that validation from their peers, it does not matter what you say. So now they gotta measure up with what they're wearing. They gotta measure up with how their hair is looking. They gotta measure up what kind of phone they got. They gotta measure up, and some of those kids, speaking from personal experience, I came up I'm a project baby. I didn't have none of that stuff. And so at some point you realize that you're different. You realize that what you have does not measure up. And whether you want the kids to not compare or do compare, they do. And so as grown-ups and teachers, as educators, we sitting there like, you shouldn't have to worry about that. You need to be, good with yourself. And, we're teaching the whole self-esteem thing. We're teaching the whole, feel good about yourself, self-worth. Don't let nobody else's opinion dictate who you are. And all that stuff sounds good. But I think sometimes as grown-ups, we forget that we're talking to middle school kids. And while they know what you're saying is true, and they know that you're looking out for their best interest, it does not negate the fact that once you walk out of my office and third period rings, and if I got on some busted shoes that's too big for me, that my mom, because she can't help it, she's just doing the best she can. So I got my big brother shoes on that's 2 sizes too big, and then you hit the corner to go to class and they start clowning you. So at that point, nothing that you just said in the office matters. It's out the window. And so that peer pressure becomes a very real thing, like I said, especially in middle school. And I can speak, I was an AP for 5 years in middle school, and 85% of the stuff when it was discipline fights came about off of peer pressure. You know how kids be jive. I don't know where you're from, jiving, roasting, whatever you want to call it, picking. Now we talk about bullying and harassment. Well, that stuff wasn't really thought of. It wasn't official titles back then. You knew that's what was happening, but I got to save face. So if you coming for me, as they say now, the kids say, if you coming for me or you confronting me, then I have to save face. I have to be able to even if I know it's wrong. Kids come in my office and be like, Mr. Barnes, I know I was wrong now, but he tried me in front of everybody. At that point, right or wrong is out the window. It's how I look when I'm walking this campus. And if a child, and I just tell my teachers this all the time, you cannot get in these kids' face. They're not going to let you embarrass them in front of their friends. they can know they're dead wrong. And they'll come in the first day to come in there. I know I was wrong, but in front of their friends, that stuff is more important. In front of their peers, that stuff is more important. Anything a grown up is saying. And so dealing with that, all that stuff runs in with the whole mental health, the social, emotional, because if I don't feel good about myself in the eyes of my friends, then I'm not going to be, in some cases, be able to function for myself. And now you want me to take a test? You want me to make a level 3 on the test so that the school can get a good grade and you can keep your job? I don't care about, no disrespect, this me talking as a child. I don't care about this school grade. I don't care about your job. I care about my image, and I care about how, Willie and Susie and Johnny see me. If they think I'm cool, that means more to me than a number on a standardized test, or even a grade on a pre-test or a midterm or a final. Kids don't care about that. And I don't know if us as grown-ups appreciate all that kids have to go through. And so when the kid does snap, or the kid does lose it, or the kid does go, in these different directions, we're like, well, what happened? What was the signs? And why did that happen? And they were giving note. I didn't even know. Like we're so shocked and surprised. But if we go back and actually kind of look at what's going on, if we pay attention, if we open our eyes, most times kids will kind of tell you, whether they're telling you with words or they're telling you with deeds or their mannerisms. You can kind of tell if a child is kind of going through something, if it's not all lining up. And I just think that part, I'm just happy that more time is being put with the social emotional learning piece, because it's needed. I think that we're finally starting to see, because what's happening is we're starting to see all of this violence on campus. And it's because these kids have got to a point that they just can't cope. They can't cope. They don't have an outlet. They don't have a release. Nobody to talk to, nobody to listen to. Or when they do talk and try to talk, people downgrade it, take it for granted. Oh, that's just this. Oh, he's just being bad. You're trying to explain it away as opposed to trying to understand and help them through it, to understand and deal with it. And so at some point, you get back into a corner and you don't have any type of tools on how to handle it. You're just going to do whatever you feel that you can to release it. And that's not always the best way to handle it. We know that as grown-ups, but imagine that some of us grown-ups, we get to a point where we can't handle it, but we're grown. So we kind of have some tools and we have some ways that we're better able to deal with it in some cases. But imagine a 12, 13, 14-year-old, in some cases, even an 8, 9-year-old, they don't know how to deal with that stuff. They don't know how to deal with it. So if we don't teach it, if we don't help them, if we just assume that they just have it and then we punish them without even understanding why they're doing something, then first of all, I don't know how we helping the kid, and I don't know how we expect for it to improve or get better if we don't first try to teach them. It's just like I can't come into a classroom and say, all right, class, today we're taking a test on ratios. They say, well, Dr. Barnes, we ain't went over ratios. So what kind of grades can I honestly expect them to make if I haven't went over the material that I'm about to test them on? They're going to fail. And there's no way around it because they haven't been exposed to the material that they need in order to pass and be successful. So if we're not doing the same thing from an emotional standpoint, from a social standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a life standpoint, then how can we expect the kids to be successful with something that they haven't been taught? And I just think, now I know, educators will be like, well, I already got to do enough. That's not my job. They should come to school with that. Well, yeah, they should. And teachers, and educators, we should be getting paid more than we get paid. But we're not. So the reality of what should be and what is don't always come together. So if we're in this education and we're in the kid business, as I say, if we're in the kid business and we're about kids, then we got to meet them where they're at. When they get off the bus, we can't assume if they got it from mom and dad or grandma, aunt, whoever's raising them, parent, guardian, that's great. But me, I've always assumed that they didn't come with it. I assume that I tell parents all the time my goal is to give them back to you the same way you gave it to me. But while I got them, they mine. I'm gonna treat them just like I treat my folk. I'm not going to. I'm gonna talk to them if they right. I'm gonna praise them if they wrong. I'm gonna get on them, and I'm gonna talk to them like I talk to my child, because when my kids are somewhere, I want you to take care of mine the same way. So I don't assume that you gave it to them. If you gave it to them, that's great. But I'm going to check them just like they walking on the campus blind, blank slate, and they don't have anything. That's how I've always done it for the 25 years I've been doing it. So if I do that, then I know they got it, because I'm giving it to them. So now when I say, hey, man, what you doing, talking to that girl sideways, I done told you that's not how you deal with females. You're a male, and in some cases you're a black male, so you don't get the same privileges, right or wrong, that other people get. You can't do that. You can't do that to no female. You're gonna be in some trouble. You're gonna be in somebody's jail. And that's how I talk to them, because society ain't playing with these kids nowadays, especially our black boys, which I'm segueing to now. They're not playing with you. They're not playing with. I got 2 black boys, so I talk the same way to other people's kids as I do to mine. And what I say is, I ain't gonna ever say nothing to you that I won't say in front of your parent. And I know your mama didn't send you to school to be acting like you ain't got no sense in the home training. So you're not gonna do it. And I just think that we have to get to the point where we don't assume it. And I know that's a lot. Teachers, the big thing about teachers is they don't want to feel like they're getting, it's one more thing. Like, we always feel like we're getting stuff added on our plate. We always feel like y'all always coming down and just giving us stuff, You're putting stuff on the plate, and you're not taking stuff off. So now I got to sit here and make sure this child is emotionally right. I got to make sure they're socially right. I got to make sure that they know how to talk to people, or they know how to listen to somebody. All that stuff, I'm not telling you it's fair. I'm not saying that it's right, but I'm saying in the business that we're in the kid business. Are we trying to help these kids to be the very best people that they can? Or are we trying to just, push them along, or say it's not for me to do? If everybody keeps saying, they got 7 teachers during the day, and all 7 teachers say it's not for me, it's not my job, it's not for me, then who? They're going to come off the bus not getting help. They're going to go through the whole day without getting help. They're going to get back on the bus not getting help. So how are they going to get any better if we don't help them? I mean, that's what we're here to do. Ms. Crockett says, in addition to the supports of SEL, student self-esteem is low based on academics. Data speaks to academic struggle. And that's a great point, Ms. Crockett. Thank you for the comment. It's just, once again, it's a crisis. It's a crisis, and it's a multi-layered crisis. And I think that the start, before we can look at a kid academically, I just think we got to look at them from a social and emotional standpoint. We got to understand what they're coming to us with, and what they have dealt with and are dealing with to get to us. Because if we can't get them to, thank you, Miss Donna Medina, share again. I'm sure I'm saying your name wrong. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for tapping in. But if we don't meet them there, I just don't think the academics is going to matter, because we're never going to get to the academics. And the last topic, just, because I don't want to keep y'all too long, is just the education of our black boys. And, I'm a black boy. Like I said, I have 2 black boys, so this is very personal to me. I think our education of our black boys is probably also at a crisis, and there's a lot of factors to it. I think probably one of the biggest factors is that they just don't see people that look like them in the halls that they're in. They don't see people that look like them in the classrooms they're in. Let's just look at it, especially like at the elementary level. You hardly see any black male teachers, staff, custodians, principals, parents at the elementary level. So a lot of times a black boy may not see somebody who looks like him until, in some cases, middle school, maybe, high school, possibly, but it's definitely not enough representation for them to see. And I have no disrespect to women, so please don't take this as a knock on, on the women, because women do a great job, and obviously, women, the education is predominantly based with women, but sometimes you got to kind of see what you look like, so you can kind of aspire. You can kind of, it becomes a mirror. If Dr. Barnes can do it, and I know he came from the projects, I know he came up with nothing, and he can do it, and he in front of me doing this, then I can do it too. And it's not a word that Dr. Barnes got to say. It's just Dr. Barnes showing up. It's just Dr. Barnes doing the right thing, staying out of trouble, holding you accountable, being an example, being a role model, showing you how to deal with people, how to deal with females, how to deal with grown-ups. Just because it's the old thing that they don't necessarily hear what you say, but they watch what you do. They watching you. They watching what you're doing, and it's going to be much more to watch what I see and what I am. I'm a black boy. At some point, I'm going to be a black man. So if I'm getting a positive image, a positive role model, because in some cases, these black boys, a lot of our black boys have been raised by single moms. Shout out to all the moms that are standing in the paint doing both jobs. It's not fair, but they're doing it. So, but the reality is that they see mom doing it, but they don't see a man. They don't see a positive representation of a man. What's going on? What's going on, brother? Brother Ken, what's up, Newt? Appreciate you tapping in with us, man. I appreciate the love and thank you for the support. But in most cases, we don't have enough representation. And so I read this article yesterday, getting ready for this, that says black boys are more likely than any other demographic group to be placed in special education. That alone is an epidemic. That alone is a crisis. Not that they're being placed in special education because they deserve to be in there. There's some some gaps. There's some educational gaps. There's some psychological stuff that's going on that they need that extra support. Those that we're not talking about that group. We're talking about the kid that has some gaps for whatever reason, and it's in education. It's cool. It's more cool to be bad than to show that you need help. And so I'd rather be a discipline behavior problem and be in the dean's office than be getting tutoring and getting help that I need. And so what happens is in a lot of systems is once you start showing that the first thing or something must be wrong with him, he must need some extra, he needs some medication, he needs some special education. He can't be normal. He can't function and be normal and be successful in a normal setting. So we just get stuffed into special ed. And one thing about it, once you get put in special ed, it is very hard to get out. And so we got a lot of kids that are in there that have no business in there other than the fact that schools don't want to deal with them because they are bad. But they're not bad because they're bad. They're avoiding the fact that they're struggling to get the content, and they don't know how to communicate it in a way that's not going to make them look bad. Because once again, that whole peer pressure, I can't raise my hand in class and show I don't know something because now I'm dumb, now you're stupid, and now you got to fight in your classroom because you ain't gonna call me dumb or stupid, even though I don't know the information. I don't know the stuff. It's just not connecting. That don't make me need to be in special ed. It just means I need some remediation. That just means I need some extra help and some support. But we never get to that point. We just, instead of us looking at, okay, why is he cutting up? Let's just put him in special ed because something must be wrong with him. Ain't nothing wrong with him. He just needs some help. All of us need some help at some time. All of us need some help at some time. And so I just think that we have to be able to understand that it's not always, especially it's not always the especially it should be the last option, not the first. And more times than not, that's the first thing you want to do. As a principal, how do you personally deal with black boys that exhibit these things that educators are not quote unquote able to happen? I just think it goes back to the fact that we have to do what a lot of us don't want to do. We're tired in education. We're wore out. We're stretched to the max. We're mentally drained. We're physically drained. like I said, all this stuff that comes down. It's just a lot to be in education nowadays. And, you don't get compensated for it. And they're instead of asking you to do more, and they're taking away. There's not a support system. You got all all this stuff coming at you all these different ways. And so it's hard to get a teacher to understand this or to even support it. So as a principal, how did I personally deal with the black boys? Like I say, I guess I was kind of in a different situation because I am a black boy. And so I personally, at my schools that I was principal over, I personally checked in, I guess, more with my black boys. Right or wrong, I checked in more with them. When I was at middle school for those 5 years, those kids that kept getting in trouble, that kept referrals, because I was the AP, so I was over disciplined. So if I see Corey got 5 or 6 different referrals in the span of 2 weeks, then I'm going to be checking in with Corey, like, what's going on? Like, we're not going to automatically say that Corey is terrible and bad. I'm going to check in, have a conversation, and see what's not. Hey man, what's the problem? Let's just why we can't keep you can't be short, keep coming up in this office. We can't keep suspending you. We can't keep putting you in ISS because you ain't learning nothing. So what's going on? Why are you in these people classes cutting up like you don't? That's how I'm talking to them. Why are you in these people classes acting like you don't have no sense, no home training? And is it an issue that you just can't? You can't, and so I'm having this one-on-one, this real man, conversation just to try to get to know the kid. And when you one-on-one with them, especially if they trust you, you all know Dr. Wright, who was my mentor, always said 2 people that you cannot fool. You can't fool kids, you can't fool dogs. So if a kid know that you care about them, I don't care what your approach is. If they know you care about them, they know you give a flip, they'll respond to you. And if you do it in the right setting, once again, I'm not having this conversation with the kid, at third period or during lunch when all his boys are around, because it's going to go a totally different way. No, I'm going to call you up there like second period, first 5 minutes of second period, when people just getting in there sharpening their pencils. They don't even know why you coming up to the office. And then we just going to have a conversation. We talking. So when you're in the office with me, or even if I pull you outside in the hallway from your class, when you remove the kid from the crowd, from the show, from the audience, you get most times, in my experience, you get a whole different conversation. So I just think you got to do a little more extra work. But like I say, for me, that's just been my approach. I don't mind doing the extra work because I just know if I do the extra work on the front end, it's going to pay off on the back end. That's just been my experience over time. So, anyway, just to finish up, because I want to make sure I keep this, within the time that was allotted to me. I appreciate the opportunity of teachers across the world to give me to speak on these topics. And I'm very hopeful that this won't be the last time, because obviously we have a lot that we need to do with our educational system. We have a great system. Well, we have a good system, but we have a chance for it to be great. But we have to do a little more, I think. And I know that's not always the sexy thing. Like I said, I know teachers are under pressure. I know principals are under pressure. I know the school as a whole is under pressure. It's under attack from a lot of forces that are seen, unseen, from a lot of things that we can control that we cannot control. But I always say keep the kids first, keep students first, and realize that's what we're here for. And it's a thankless job in most cases, but when you get that kid that tap in, I had a kid, one of my kids, that he's a grown man now. He has his own business, multiple businesses. I reached out to him this morning about something, and part of his response, he gave me an answer, but then he told me that he was proud of me. He was proud of me, and and that kind of stuff never gets old, because no matter how old they get, they never forget that positive impact, that positive interaction with that adult who believed in them, who fought for them, who didn't give up on them. And it's just amazing what a kid can do when they just got one adult. Just imagine if it's more than one, but one adult that is going to stand in the paint for them and believe in them and fight for them. And that's just, in my 25 years, that's what I've been. I fight for every kid that I come in contact with. I fight more for the kids that have the issues, because I know I didn't come to school perfect. I came to school with a lot of negative checks as far as home life and social life and economic and that kind of stuff, that I could have went totally different ways. So I thank God every day that, I'm where I'm at, because I know I don't take it for granted. And I felt like he took care of me and he got me in place. He put me in education to walk in my gift to take care of other people's kids, including mine. And I don't expect other people to be that way, but I do understand that it's tough. I do understand it's tough. But we're in the kid business, and if it's not going to be us, then who's it going to be? They coming to us for guidance. They coming to us to learn. They coming to us to grow. And my thing is, we want to make sure that they leave us better than they came. And every day we want to get 1% better. And that one interaction could be, you never know, that could be the key from them snapping or them line up, to shake your right hand and turn the Tesla from right to left when it's time to graduate. So anyway, I appreciate y'all giving me your time tonight. That's my time. Like I said, I didn't want to stay on here more than that was allotted. I'm hopeful that this will be the first of many conversations, because they're warranted. I think they're long overdue, and like I said, I think that there's something here to help our most valuable resources, which are our kids. So, thank you all for checking in with Conversations with Dr. Cora Jaye. Hopefully, you will continue to support us as we continue to try to educate, elevate, and grow together. So, you all have a great rest of your evening, and God bless you. And we out. Peace.